folks. Thank you, everybody, for creating your Google Classroom class sections. You'll notice here, after you have shared them with Richie and me, I have a lot of classes. So students are not going to have this many, you're not going to have this many. But as I was looking at this and thinking about what parents and students are going to see, they will probably have 7 different class cards in when they open Google Classroom. So because of that, I've already had some parents express concern about how they're going to be able to help kids to maneuver through all of this when they aren't necessarily computer proficient. Because of that, I think we need to try to make what's on their end as incredibly simple as possible. The first thing I noticed, and what I'm going to ask everybody to try to do this week and as soon as possible, would be to as we start looking at these classes, Google Classroom does not organize them in any particular order unless you click on them and start dragging them physically and moving them. So they're just showing up. They may be by teacher. I haven't figured out how they're even showing up yet, but they're just somewhat appear to be random. The other thing that you might notice as you're just looking at this screen right now, although it's pretty easy to determine for most of these what the subject is, possibly what period it is, possibly what grade it is. Overall, they're definitely on the parent and student end, it's going to be really helpful if these titles that we use as a middle school can be all having a consistent format. It's very easy to change the class section name, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a section. But I first wanted to show you a sample that I found that looks from the student's end what they would see if we had a consistent format for both the class name and the section, which is where you'll put the period. So let me just drag that up here right now, and you can take a look at this. This, I think, if a kid logged in or a parent's trying to figure out how to use this, is probably the best way to go. You'll notice that there is a consistent period format under the subject name. The subject or the class is very, very short and easy to read. Just so you know, also, some of you have put your own name up in here somewhere in the section or the class name, which is fine. However, just know that it shows up down here as well. And when we try to get consistent, it probably makes more sense just to know that your name, and if you have a photo uploaded into your account, will just show up for students, and Google Classroom knows automatically who you are when you're creating these classes. So again, if you look up here, very simple, short subject name, and the period is just listed period 1, period 2, period 3. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to pull up something I just put together just as a good rule of thumb that I would like everybody to try to meet this format. So I'll give you a couple samples in a minute. But for example, class name. What you're seeing right here in the center of your screen are just general samples. I changed grades and subject names and teacher names, but you'll get a general idea of what some of the ones we have already on our Google Classroom are listed as. Again, if you were a student or a parent looking at that, might be a little tricky to figure out where you're supposed to go on Tuesdays to get certain work. So I would ask that everybody start coming up with a class name that follows this format, okay? My recommendation also is to keep the main part of the title, this is the part I have in blue, to about 15 characters maximum, okay? That's very easy to do if you're just sticking with the subject, and to the right of it, the general grade that you're teaching. If it's not a graded class, like you're teaching 6th or 7th, you could put 6 through 7. I know math has formats that sometimes are not the exact grade. That's fine to put in like that because kids are already used to that in their schedule. But starting with the subject, not the grade, not the teacher name, and then right after the subject, you would have some indication of what grade is being taught there, okay? My other recommendation, and I know some of you who have used Google Classroom for a couple of years are already doing this now, and it's a good idea, is what I would say is as soon as you're done with this format, add the, in a parentheses, 19-20 to indicate the 1920 school year. That will come in very handy next year. Not terribly important this year, but if you continue with Google Classroom next year, which I hope after everybody's done this, you realize it's a pretty good format to give online work. It's helpful to then, you could just change the title next year for your first period class. Might be the same course, you have different students, and you just list that as 20 to 21, and you can quickly, in your side of it, differentiate which was an older class, and you could archive those classes. The only other thing I would just add is if you have more information that you feel is essential for students to know, not for you to know, you can put that elsewhere, but for students to see, such as in 5th grade, you have the eagles and the beavers, and all those other animals for the homerooms, you certainly can put that in, but please put that in after the consistent format. And then students will see that when they open up and go into the main view and the stream of their particular course. They will probably not see that in their class card just because the name is getting too long to fit in there. Okay, so I'm going to come back and just show you how you can quickly do that. Do a couple examples and then let you go to it. I would ask you get this done sometime before you head to spring break so that when we come back, we can tell parents that all of the classes are going to look very much like this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what we have here. I'll make this a little smaller over here. Keep this format up here so you can take a look at it. Okay, so here would be an example. We have a class. I'll just pick the one closest to the class formats here. This is a CS7-1, which is you can see the 1920 is already in there. This is a 7th grade computer science class, first period. Okay, all good information, but to follow that format, we would open these 3 dots, come down to edit. And as soon as you edit, all of a sudden you see the class name and the section. This is all we're going to need to change. So the section would be the class period. Notice this is first period. So we would just put period 1. Now this may be an A day, this may be a B day. Okay, so if it's an A day class, you would do period 1A. All right, and then you would change this section. The 1920 is good, but you would change this to computer science 7. And that would be the format instead of CS7-1 1920. Okay, I'm just going to cancel that out so I don't actually change this for that teacher. Here, let's come down. Here's another one. We have morning, 6th grade, A3. You'll notice with this, you can't even tell if you're a student what subject we're talking about yet. Okay, so that's why it's important to have a shorter title for students. So I'm going to click on this, I'm going to edit, see what I'm looking at. And looks like we have art in there. Okay, so what I would do is it's 6th grade art. Looks like period A3. So again, this period is very, very close to the format we'd like for periods. But instead of saying A3, we would do 3A, okay? Just to stay consistent. So we go period 3-A. And this up here, we would start with art first. And then we would go to 6th grade, so it would just be art 6. And we would put in 1920. Take this out. And there you go. And if we can all do that for our 5 or 6 or 7 classes, this is going to look really slick for parents and students come right after spring break. Okay? If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. Hopefully that's helpful enough to get you started on this. Okay, thanks everybody. I sure hope this works because I'm going to stop it now and I hope my built-in microphone works. Okay, have a good day. Take care.